Hello, everybody. Yeah, this is Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast. This is the 15 stage mode within Outrun 2006. For those that don't know, Outrun 2006 released in 2006. It had the Outrun 2 game and Outrun 2 SP, which I think is like the special routes version. I can't remember what it actually stands for, the SP. But obviously you've got the two different versions. But one thing they introduced in this was the 15 stage continuous, which is basically all 15 environments. You go through every single one, and you can do it on Outrun 2, as you can see here, and you can do it on Outrun 2 SP. For this one, we're going to do Outrun 2. Also, one other thing to mention is that in this game we also had two different classes of cars. So you had the regular cars and the Outrun class. The Outrun class are way faster. And obviously you can see here we've got some extra cars as well on top of the ones that we normally have. So the one that you've just been seeing is the Tesla Roadster, I believe, the one that was in the original Outrun. But we can pick from a variety of Ferraris here, including the Enzo and F430 and so on. A lot of these cars were brought in because of the fact of it being a bit more modern. As a result, obviously, we're going to be using manual for this. And we've got a variety of music that we can use. That's Outrun 2, if we so desire. Now I'm going to pick, if I wanted to, I could pick random if I want to. So I can do just random. So we'll start timer in 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so the actual time of this game is measured in game time rather than RTA. So realistically, the RTA is just going to include the loading screens. So, the main thing I want to just start off by mentioning is we're going to quickly move over here at the start to gain as best speed as we can. Now you may notice as well that we are using actually I'm using a steering wheel and pedals to do this. That is because of the fact that this game plays decent if you have a keyboard and control or a controller. If you've got a steering wheel and pedals, you might as well use them, like I'm doing. Now, I will just say, for the most part, that you don't have recognisable cars in this, other than your rivals. Your rivals will be recognisable. And for those that don't really know about Outrun 2006, so as I said, it released in 2006, had all these extra game modes on top of the original game. But one thing you can see immediately here that the game has is it has a slipstream mechanic. So this can be used with traffic, but it can also be used with other cars and things like that. So we are going to be going through, as I said, the entire 15 environments. So there may be a few crashes and things like that, so apologies in advance, like so. I will just say for the most part, like, I'm not the best in the world, but I will try my best to sell this as best as I can. So as I was saying, you have a slipstream mechanic which can be used quite a lot. As a result, this version of Outrun 2 or of the tracks is actually a lot faster than the original. So as such, you can't submit times that you do on this game. You can't submit them for Outrun 2. Outrun 2006 has its own leaderboard. As I was saying though, for the most part, the fact that it has the slipstream mechanic means that you'll be 9 times out of 10 you will be making yourself a lot faster than you need to be. Now, I'm completely unsure as to how the slipstream works in its entirety, but from what I gather, so other than obviously you sit behind a car, you get the slipstream effect, but as far as I know, to continuously keep your speed up, you actually want to make sure that when you get the maximum amount of speed that you end up relaxing a little bit and backing off and staying behind certain cars. And if you stay behind, if you slipstream the maximum, as kind of demonstrated here, that was a bit wide there, but if you stay behind a car whilst doing the slipstream, what will end up happening is you'll reach the maximum speed of the car, but then the maximum speed of the car will also then start to decrease for some reason. So keeping it consistent is one of the main things. Another way that you can do in Outrun 2 and in this game as well, so one of the things that is very key, now I can't do this, but something that you can do to keep your speed up through corners is you want to make sure that you're downshifting and upshifting a lot. Now, for me personally, I drive the car about as flat out as I can get it. Obviously, I will use the brakes on corners, Now there is one other key thing to mention. So the fastest car in the game, or fastest cars in the game, are usually like the Enzo Ferrari and stuff like that. You may be wondering why I'm not using that. I'm using the 328 GTS. Well, for me personally, it's the one that has a good amount of grip and a good amount of top speed without it being really bad on either of those. So, for example, the Dino 246, which I believe is a beginner's car, is actually really good. It's a really good car because its grip is pretty insane, but it suffers with top speed. So in a straight line, it suffers. This is the same for the Outrun class as well as the regular class. The 328 suffers with cornering ability, but has really good top speed. And this is one of the main reasons why we tend to use it, because it's like a bit of a mix. Now you could use the Enzo Ferrari, which is the highest top speed, well, one of the highest top speeds in the game. But what you want to make sure you don't do is, obviously, it's a lot more tricky to drive because the grip on it is no good. Now I will just say that this particular bit here is a little bit tricky, so I'm going to back off here. There we go. Good stuff. Nice, very nice. Now, it is actually worth mentioning, so this game's still around in the arcades here in the UK. There are a few gaming places that I've been that still have the Outrun 2 arcade machine. However, the Outrun 2 arcade machine, you have a few variants of them. So obviously, as I was saying before, you have Outrun 2, you have Outrun 2 SP. But there's actually the 2006 version. Now, you may be thinking, why make two different ones? So the Outrun 2 game itself, the original Outrun 2 cabinets, as I was saying before, Outrun 2 doesn't have this slipstream mechanic that this game has. Whereas if you play the more modern ones, then you'll find that there is a slipstream mechanic. That is because you're playing the 2006 version of Outrun 2, the coast-to-coast version, basically. Because this is the only version that had the slipstream mechanic. Now, again, why they made two different versions, I don't know, but obviously, again, this was something that Sega was doing back in 2006. The one thing I will mention as well, and somebody briefly mentioned this as well in the intermission, I believe during the last run of Outrun that we just had, is this game did do something really good, which it's not that much. As I said, the thing is, this game isn't that much different to Outrun 2. If you play Outrun 2 and you're playing the 2006 version, other than the slipstream. But they have actually included a few good mixes of the songs. So for those that liked the original, you can actually play the original versions of some of the music and remixes, which is really cool, I think. And it's a nice touch because at the end of the day, there are people here that, that were around in the 1980s with Outrun and, that played the other Outrun games in the series and may want to play the old music whilst they're playing the more modern game. I'm not going to lie, I've done that on several occasions, played games with the old music from the 80s and, the 80s and 90s, the original game, in a more modern game because it fits better, in my opinion. Now, in terms of areas, I know we've kind of brushed on past most of these. This one is a bit on the tricky side, but there is I think it's like Haunted Mansion or something. Not a great corner, that. But there's, I think it's like Spooky Forest or something. There's speculation that the main thing about this Spooky Forest or whatever stage it is was that it had something to do with another popular series that Sega had also helped make, called House of the Dead. Now, we looked into this the other day and found out that there was actually nothing that resembled it, but the theming for it fits it very, very well. So for those that don't know, or are unaware, I'm sure everybody knows of the House of the Dead series, but if you don't, it's a rail shooter series that was developed by Sega back in the mid to late 90s, I think. And still continues to this day, albeit new games barely come out for the series. I think the recent one was Scarlet Dawn, from what I heard. But yeah, as I was saying, some of the assets from House of the Dead and things like that have been found in other games. For example, Something that Broken Hyperlink did at a recent gaming event, UKSG. She did play, I don't think she ever mentioned it, but she played Sega and Sonic All-Stars, the Java edition, and one of the tracks that's there is Ghost Forest. This is the one I was on about. And then there's Curion's Mansion from the original House of the Dead in there, in the backdrop somewhere. So supposedly, we thought, well, maybe there's a possibility it's in here, because it's Sega. You know what Sega's like, they like putting Easter eggs in games for themselves. Which I think would be really cool, to be honest. And the other thing that if I can be like completely honest about it with Outrun, is there are games out there that do the drift mechanics well. Like, they do. You know, they try and things like that. But I don't think anything really comes close to the drift mechanics of this. I'd say maybe Ridge Racer, to an extent. The more modern Ridge Racers, but the handling model, the drift models more specifically for this, is probably one of my favourites. I've really enjoyed it. Like, this is the thing, is that with this game in particular, is that I found it to be very enjoyable. I think this is the one game that you could probably put money in, pay, you know, you could constantly just knock quarters out or dollars out, whichever. And yeah, it was really fun. And I honestly really enjoy it, so. What was a big shame, though, was the fact that there was no, there wasn't any particular thing that Outrun did, I think, following this game. No, from memory, and maybe people can back me up on this, but there has not been a new Outrun game since this one, I think. Which is a real shame, and I think it is one series that, love it or hate it, whether you burnt hundreds of bucks on it or not, or you played it in arcade cabinets, it's a game that you play it for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, you enjoy your time with it, and then you leave it be. Or if you're speedrunning, you grind it down. But, you know, for the most part, you play it, you enjoy it, and you leave it be. And I think this is one thing that is missing with inside the racing scene a lot of the time. But also handling models too. As I was saying, the drift model for this is very cool. Now, I would contrary to believe that this particular environment is based on Paris. Now, there's nothing that says it is based on Paris, but given the fact of how it is, with like the Eiffel Tower and stuff like that, and the way it is, I'd say it's very most likely Paris. Coming up next, actually, we've got Ancient Ruins. So Ancient Ruins isn't too bad, it's more set in the desert, so I'd say like Egypt, maybe, to an extent. It is a very tricky environment because of the sand, but also it is just genuinely difficult. This can usually be found, I think, on at the end of Route D, I want to say, for the most part. Yeah, also we're going to keep this drift going, because we can. Very nice, very nice. But there is one thing that always gets me on this one. So, this particular corner here is a bit of a tricky one because it goes right and left. Obviously, you can drift around it. But yeah, it's not too bad. I may cut across the grass, I'm not sure. We'll see. So yeah, this is one that's at the end of Goal D. And then, obviously, we now move on to the final two. So one is called Imperial Avenue. So people mentioned about this the other day when I was streaming this, but a lot of people think that this was based off maybe Italy sort of vibes I get. And to be honest, if you get Italy vibes from this stage, I don't blame you. This feels very Italy to me, especially with the fact that they're bringing Rome Colosseum is right there. So you guys can let me know in the chat, I'm sure. The last one is supposed to be some sort of Mediterranean, I think it is, like Mediterranean tower. Something like that. Now this particular corner, I won't lie, is one that, I'll be honest, as I said, I'm using the brakes a fair bit more than I would, but that's simply because of the fact of I want to try and keep it out of the barriers as much as I can. I'm quite happy that I haven't crashed yet, so that's a good sign. Which reminds me, we are now moving on to the final one for this. We are now moving into the final zone. I'm going to get the slipstream off him. This one is Cape Way. So this is like in the Mediterranean. This is a very tricky very tricky stage itself. Not only is it very tricky just like normally, so this is the ending for, I think it's Route E, which is to do with the hardest ending in the entire game to get. I won't lie, this actually was one that I still struggle with to this day. It is one of the hardest because it has a lot of hairpins and it has corners like this one where you need to deliberately slow down, turn in on the inside, turn in again on the inside of here, and then we're through the last corner and time. And that's it. And that is all 15 stages back to back. And as well, I believe it was a PB. Now, as I said, we go off in-game time for the leaderboards. But that is the entire run. But yeah, that was a PB, so I'll take that. It was about a second PB, so I'll happily take that. I think that might move me up slightly in the leaderboards. But yeah, feel free to give this a try. As I said, so the game was available on PC, PlayStation 2, and original Xbox. If you somehow have a copy on the PS2, savour it, because it is getting worth quite a bit of money on the market. Xbox, the original Xbox release, the physical edition, is worth quite a bit of money as well, so just be aware of that. But there is other things as well, as I was saying. So there is the 15-stage SP mode, so maybe I could come back and do that next time. It did come out on the PSP, someone's just mentioned as well. I completely forgot about the PSP version, so you can play this on the PSP. But yeah, that is the entire run. Now, you can practice each individual goal. There are 5 goals, A to E. Obviously, you guys probably know that, but in case you didn't, there's 5 particular goals. Each one has their own category and leaderboard. There is one for the 15-stage continuous, and obviously, there's one for all the SP stuff as well. All of the cars as well, as I said, there's quite a variety of cars. You have the regular cars, so if you can do a run with the regular cars, feel free to do so. The Outrun cars are the ones that all the runners use because they are much faster. Personally speaking, I would highly recommend, if you're going to start with this game, use the Outrun class, but use these two. The Dyno 246 GTS and the 365 GTS/4 Daytona. For those that may recognise this car, this is the one that Crockett used to have in Miami Vice back in the 1980s. So there's a fun little bit of trivia for you. The regular version, that is, not the Outrun class. These two cars are essentially the beginner and have the highest amount of grip. So I would highly recommend starting with these. It'll give you a lot easier time for making corners. Would not recommend most of these cars, even the Testarossa. The 288 GTO is a really good one, and obviously the 328 GTS is probably one of the best. If you so desire and you are brave enough, you can use the 250 GTO or the 512 BB. If you really want to challenge yourself, feel free to use any of these: the F40, the 550 Barchetta, the F430 Spider, and lastly, as I said, the Enzo Ferrari. Feel free to use any of those if you wish to do so. But for now, that is Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast. You can get a patch as well that makes this game work on modern hardware. It is available on websites, and you can get it to get it working in the modern one. If you've got a wheel, probably play with a wheel. It's best. You can play the control and keyboard. There's nothing against any of that. Yeah, I think that's going to be just about it. But for now, I'll send it back over to intermission.